So, we're back here again with the plaster cast. As you can see, it's actually very nice lighting actually. You can see the different areas where it's raised, where the different impressions have been cast in the plaster. It's been drying for, or curing for about, probably about 5 days. And you can feel it's dry. It makes a nice ringing sound. It doesn't take any imprints. And just leave it, leave it for 5 days to a week. Longer the better, just to completely cure. What I've done at the edges here, I've just trimmed off the edges where I had the raised bit. And I literally did that when the plaster was soft. I took a chisel to it or a palette knife, and you can literally kind of scrape them off. So you can see I've got a nice sort of smooth edge here. And there, and that just it just will help the roller not get damaged or chipped. I've left a raised bit here, which if you can imagine is the reverse, as it were, when I put my my plasticine in and I left an edge, because I just want to print that to show you where we're going to the next film as well. Got here a let's say soft rubber roller. When I say soft, it's still a printmaking roller, but it's just it's one of the softer shore rollers, and I'm just black ink, standard black oil-based ink. Again, it'll probably work with the water-based inks. I just tend to work oil-based in nearly everything I do printmaking. I don't want a really thick layer. You just kind of want to take the impression. Now, as I said, when you're sticking things in the plasticine, it's really difficult to tell you've got the same depth all over, and so that will affect what you're printing here, because you don't have the same depth of cast. If anyone has any genius ideas how to make sure you get the same depth when you're pushing into the plasticine, let me know. Now you can seal it at this stage before you start inking up. You can seal it with a varnish so that the ink doesn't get immediately absorbed. I'm actually going to be using the oil-based ink as my sealant. So I'm going to be inking up, take an impression so we can all see what it looks like, and then I'm just going to let the black ink dry on the surface. So the black oil-based ink is in essence acting as a sealant. So I'm literally just going to roll over the surface. Just going to get a bit more ink on my roller there. A little bit dry. It's a really nice way to create textures, and you can addition from this, because plaster, once it's dry, is incredibly tough stuff. Once it's dry, it's not going anywhere. You can see already some of the textures picking up, and although with a soft roller I do have tram lines going across, that's the bit of plaster there. That's the sort of the edge of the roller picking up on the plaster. It allows me to be quite more specific with where I'm inking to make sure I get the ink into the various different depths of the plaster. So this is very additionable, as in the plate will last as long as you are gentle when inking it up, so that you don't start degrading the plaster. Just ink up this bit as well. With this bit over here, as you can see now I've inked it, I scratched into the dry plaster with, that was just an etching needle. Kind of like sgraffito. Is it sgraffito? That is the term, isn't it? Where you scratch into pottery or you scratch into a surface. It creates a really nice burr, a bit like a dry point mark. So, there are many possibilities. For instance, you could cast just a completely blank tile and just scratch into it to create an additionable surface. Just trying to make sure I've got everything. And actually sometimes the different depths are quite interesting. You can play off them. Like here, the fish is disappearing as if it's jumping into the ocean or some beautiful river somewhere. Okay, I think we're going to start printing that. This is obviously, I say obviously, this is a hand printed thing only. If this piece of plaster were to go under the press, it would just go crack, it wouldn't work. It's not flexible. So you can see you've got really, I mean already that's quite beautiful in itself. Let that dry, you've got a piece like that. But what we're going to do is hand print it. I have a hand printing baron I made, just because I made it with a piece of cedar. You can use a wooden spoon. You want something that you can be quite specific with. So a general flat all over one might not work too well. This is a piece of Japanese paper. It's 39 grams. You can kind of see, I mean, hold it. It's not the thinnest they make, but it allows hand printing. I'm not having to put all the weight on my hand printing surface with thick paper. Just a piece of tissue paper over the top to stop me scuffing up the back. And I'm just going to start going for it. So the advantage of using a wooden spoon or some very particular hand printing baron is I'm using sort of the pointy end, not the pointy end, but the more specific end to really work the certain areas I want. I'm holding it with my left hand. Lovely. Just to make sure it doesn't slip, because obviously it's very difficult to create a registration system with a chunk of plaster, because it's got a depth and it's got movement, so you kind of you have to hold it and don't move. Now the first time you print it, the plaster will have absorbed some of the oil-based ink, so you might not get all the detail, hence why you seal it, so that when you come to print it, it's not absorbing any of the ink. And the pressure I'm applying, I'm being quite tough on it. I mean, plaster, if you get the right type of plaster is incredibly tough stuff, but obviously it can chip, so don't dig into it. General little circles all over, and you can see, especially the Japanese paper, you can see where you're going, so you can kind of know where you need to be more specific. And you are working with an undulating surface, so hence why again the Japanese paper has its use, because it's slightly, you can sort of wiggle about a bit more. There's our disappearing fish. We're almost done now, just getting this bit of texture down here, which is a scour. And then we'll have a look what we've got. And I think we're done, almost. Let's get those bits there. Skews the backs to the camera. Just getting that solid bit at the top there. We're done. So there we go. Just give it a little blow. There's a bit of plaster dust. So there we go. That is, if I remove the tissue paper and do that, and I think we're on shot. Brilliant. There we go. So you see it's picked up some really nice marks. This is the bit which was just left solid and I scratched into, again very satisfying. The fishes are looking beautiful. Got some scour mark down here, some grid areas. And when you seal it, I mean this because of the nature of just wanting to film this for you, some of the plaster dust, the plaster has sort of cracked off with the ink, and it's on my print. If you do give it a seal before you print it, so a varnish, a PVA glue varnish, there are many varnishes out there you can use for plaster, and give it 1 or 2 coats. None of that plaster will come off on your print, so you'll pick up more detail. But it's got some really beautiful marks going on, some beautiful wiggles. That was the grid, that was the Jaguar car tyres. That was the lid of the little white lid of like a sort of long life milk carton. Fishes stamped in, horse footprints there, nails, screws, many beautiful effects. And it's even this, you know, that's quite stunning as well. It's always the plate. But if this is sealed properly, you can produce many from it. So this is sort of the first introduction into what you can do with plaster, which is very interesting. The next one I'm going to do is actually we're going to be casting prints in the plaster to produce a positive like this, but of specific printmaking techniques. So I shall leave that as that.